AvMed has been an amazing sponsor, and I'm really excited. How many of you came here thinking you were happy people? Wow. So I can tell you that I'm not an innately happy person. I have to wake up every day and say, today I'm going to be happy. And if I don't remember that, I can forget and not be so happy, right? So it's important we have these conversations because happiness is something that's attainable and available to all of us, including the people that need us who are supported by services sponsored by the Alliance. So if people are infirm, if you're dealing with patients who have impairments, physical limitations, cognitive impairments, difficulties with transitions, it's those moments of happiness that may serve as that bridge between a good day and a not good day. And I think that learning about this is really important, and we have the right people with us. So if you don't have your microphone, I will share this. We're just gonna have some questions, but I do wanna remind you, on your table, there's paper and pens, and if you have questions, just jot it down, and Oscar from Mount Sinai will come around in a little bit and pick it up. So we're gonna talk to all of these experts and try to understand how we can, today we spent networking, learning, making new friends, having delicious food. We created a sense of community in this room. And that can be something that lasts for an hour, a few minutes, but we can walk out of here feeling, a little kick in our steps because of the experience we shared. So how do we integrate the ongoing learning with moments of happiness that's available to everybody? And I guess I'd like to hear from each of your perspectives.
So I guess in talking about ongoing learning, I think that's an interesting concept that, from an academic perspective, we look at a little bit differently, is, how do we engage individuals in that continued learning space? That is one of the things that we look at in terms of educational achievement. I'm sure Dr. Galvin has research that looks at the relationship between educational attainment and cognitive decline. And so I think looking at those pieces and then trying to figure out how we get in. I can say one of the struggles we have in Southwest Florida are gated communities. And we are constantly talking about how do we get ourselves inside the gates to reach older adults so that we can get this information out to them and continue to educate them on what's available to them.
Thank you so much, Joy. So we spoke before about the SPIRE model. And the SPIRE model, the I, is actually intellectual well-being. So once we learn more and we elevate our well-being in the intellectual, we learn, we are more curious. They know today curiosity didn't kill the cat. It's actually, it actually contributes to longevity. So, and learning doesn't have to be just reading a book. We can learn in so many things. And another one is humor. So humor is also very important to people's happiness. So if we can combine humor with learning, with storytelling, I think it can help a lot of people feel much better in their old lives, and understanding that learning doesn't have to be going to school and reading a book. It can be in many, many ways differently, including humor.
So I think you said something really interesting, which is that in order for you to feel happy every day, you kind of have to make that part of your routine. And as a natural-born pessimist, yes. And so I think there is this aspect of building in different things that work to get you into the right headspace. And those things are going to change. They're going to evolve over time. You'll find new ones. But, if I'm having a particularly bad day, I know that if I turn on Bluey with my kids and dance around and act silly, like my day is automatically better. And we're always finding new ways to do that. And so I think spending time learning about how you respond to certain things and what things you can keep in your arsenal, so that if you're like us and you just kind of default to the not happy, sunshiny side of things naturally, you've learned what your arsenal is and you keep it close.
Yeah, I think one of the things to take away is that there's no one magic formula, right? So for each person, the things that make them happy is going to be different. And so I talked about building a better brain, and I gave you 6 parts to that, right? But they're not equal. So, for some people, doing a leisure activity makes them happy. For other people, exercising makes them happy. Exercising makes me dysphoric. So I have no natural endorphins, so I'm not a particularly happy person in that sense. But I find a lot of satisfaction in what I do because I spend a lot of time thinking and helping people. That makes me feel happy, right? And so the point being is that, there's no one thing that's right for everybody. An one-size-fits-all approach really fits no one. And so you really need to think about what makes you happy and what makes you sad, and try to choose those things that make you happy to live a happy life.
Do complicate things as, what do we expect? What is happiness, right? I know all of us, when we're children, well, maybe not when we're children, by the time we're teenagers and we're setting goals and we're in our 20s and we're maybe achieving some of them, and then in our 30s, life gets harder. And we know people in their 40s and early 50s are not always the happiest. So, one of the groups that I know Max mentioned that we address is the needs of caregivers, right? With so many tens of millions of them in our, throughout the country. How can we impart some tips on ease? We always are about ease of use. How do we have ease of happiness, right? How do we let people know this is available to you without minimizing it, yet making it available to all?
Okay, so I think when we talk about caregivers, it's very important to understand that the stress that you see every day, you encounter every day, it's hard to be happy when you have such stress. And the important thing with stress is not to avoid stress, because you cannot, is to actually have enough recovery. You need to allow yourself to take some recovery. During the day, if it's going for a couple of minutes of deep breathing or going for a short walk, good sleep at night, one day a week that you don't answer your phones. I'm sure that everybody can find those days, and even take one good vacation a year and just delete everything that you remembered before. I think that the problem is not the stress, is really that we don't let ourselves recover, and then we come home and we turn on the TV because maybe we can get a little more stress from the news, and we just don't understand that it's not helpful. So do the work we do. Give others is very important, but also give yourselves. Take care of yourself. It's not just that they tell you in the airplane to put the oxygen on you first before you do it on the children. It's exactly the same thing with you. It's not selfish to do it. It's actually, you care about somebody else, then you need to take care of yourself. So this is what I would really highly recommend that you take the time to do.
Dr. Galvin, would you advise caregivers?
Yeah, so I was actually going to use the oxygen analogy. I think a lot of people use this oxygen analogy when we're trying to describe this. The first part of caring for someone else is caring for yourself. So when we see a patient in the office and the loved ones with them, it really is the silent patient, right? So we're not taking care of one person, we're taking care of at least 2, sometimes more. And so I think it's really important to think about what is that caregiver doing to help themselves? Because if they fail in the care for themselves, how could they manage the care of their loved one who's going to be very dependent on them? Caregiving is a biomedical challenge, right? So the actual practice of caregiving raises inflammatory markers, increases headaches, increases GI complaints, decreases response to vaccines. So it is a biomedical challenge. But the other thing is that we're talking right now of all the bad things about caregiving, but there are actually a lot of really good things about caregiving. Caregiving can give people a sense of accomplishment. They can feel that the joy that they're providing care to their loved one and giving back to them. For many people, it makes them feel good. It has high life satisfaction in providing that care. So it's not an entirely negative experience. And I don't think a lot of time we don't talk about the positive appraisals of caregiving. and figure out how to enhance those while diminishing the negative appraisals of caregiving.
And L2, that ties in with your metaphor of shattered glass, right? I consider myself a thriving former caregiver. And while I was caregiving for over 20 years, I was barely surviving. And that the metaphor of a shattered glass really resonated with me relative to caregivers. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's this sense of guilt that often comes around with caretaking. I think as a caretaker, I took care of my dad for a long time. I was one of 4 people taking care of him full time, and it still wasn't enough. And so when we talk about the intense, incredible burden of caretaking, it is not to be understated. But also, the caretaker has valid emotional responses to that process, even if they get incredible validation and quality of life out of it. It's still very hard. And so I think first is just acknowledging the fact that most of them have hard days and feel intensely guilty for having those hard days, as if having hard days means that they don't want to be doing this or they don't appreciate the fact that they get the opportunity to do this. I think validating those feelings and just letting people authentically have them. I think most parents especially can identify with this, and it's very similar in caretaking. You can love your kids fiercely and want all of the best for them and want to spend all of your time with them and also need a break and also not need to be on all the time. And so if you're, like myself, sandwiched between your children and your parents and responsible on both ends for it, often instead of saying, this is really hard and I'm struggling, we keep it inside and feel guilty for struggling. And so I think just having open conversations about how you are not less of a caretaker because it's hard, because it's literally built to be like that, and also you can love it some days and really struggle with it some days. That takes off so much of the pressure of being this superhero that none of us are, so that it's a much more manageable experience.
So I had to look at the book
Sorry?
For Dr. Felke. In my head, I've been saying Shady Rest, Shady Pines, Golden Girls. It just makes me think of them. Do you do programming for this population to uplift?
Yeah, so what we're doing, we come from an interdisciplinary perspective. So we, as I was talking about, we were trying to figure out who we will be, who we won't be. We're only 2 years old at this point as an institute, so we're not as established as some of the other centers and institutes that you'll find across the state. But we're also not solely focused on just Alzheimer's or dementia or just senior policy. We are taking a more holistic, as I said, interdisciplinary approach. Our first 3 faculty hires, to give you an example, music therapy, arts and community engagement, and construction management, right? And this construction management faculty member we hired, she's an architect, an engineer, and a contractor. And she's currently applying for an NIA grant to do 3D modeling of staircases to prevent older adult falls. So right now we're hiring long-term care administration, exercise science, and computer science to go along with our internal people of physical therapy, occupational therapy, social work, psychology, and business administration. And so all of those faculty are doing different things. Animal-assisted intervention, advanced fall prevention and balance screenings with a philanthropic aspect of getting individuals the durable medical equipment they need when they find that they're not capable of obtaining it on their own. We're doing the cognitive health screening using the Cognitive Clarity devices that Dr. Galvin also uses. So a lot of those pieces are where we are right now. We've also started some work with, again, students, which is what's nice to see. We had a storytelling for positive aging course that began this year, that intergenerational piece that Tammy talked about, that we found out last week is actually going to be picked up as part of a national social impact campaign with a forthcoming Netflix movie starring Susan Sarandon and Vince Vaughn. It's called Nonas. And we were very happy to see that this little course that we designed on getting students to talk with older adults was selected for this social impact campaign. So we're very excited about that as well.
Joy, if I can add, I want to add something. It's working? Yeah. I just want to add one thing that, for caregivers especially, we do it because we feel that it's a calling most of the time. But a lot of time we forget that it's a calling. And I think that reframing what we do, when we find it as a calling, I think it's easier, it's easier for us to do it. And I would urge the agencies to provide the caregivers with workshops, with retreats, with fun days, with things that will give them the energy and that will help them reframe the work as a calling.
So, Oscar, I'm going to ask you, do you have any questions yet if we want to see? All right. I'm sharing.
And I'm happy to read your questions. All right. So for Dr. Galvin, is there a way to get tested to see if your percentage of having dementia or Alzheimer's? And if yes, does insurance cover it?
So as one gets older, there is something called the annual wellness visit, which is first an introduction to Medicare and then an annual visit after that. And those visits are really to look at preventive health, including screening for cognitive impairments. There's no prescribed way as to how one will do that, but that's part of the evaluation. But for anybody, if you have concerns about your memory, the first person to talk to is your primary care provider. And if there are concerns, you can see a specialist. You can participate in research projects that are looking at healthy aging and risk of disease. So the key thing is to take some action because, as I mentioned, you don't have to think about all the risks that people are, but instead, what can I do to build a better brain? And I think, we gave you, pieces of the formula, but it's going to be tailored to each individual.
Great, thank you. Another question for you is, what are your thoughts on Alzheimer's being, quote unquote, type 3 diabetes?
Right. So there was an investigator about 20 years ago now who coined that phrase. And so diabetes is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. But Alzheimer's disease is not diabetes. Diabetes is just one of the many, many risk factors. Most gut hormones are also present in the brain, including insulin. And there's a lot of insulin receptors in the brain that have nothing to do with sugar. It really has to do with second messenger systems that help set one cell talk to another. But all the things that help us digest food are also present in the brain. And so there is a strong gut-brain axis connection, and that's being explored more and more. But it's a misstatement to call Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes.
And another question, I believe this one's for you as well. How did the isolation caused by COVID affect the progression of Alzheimer's disease in the elderly?
So great question. So first, I always get a lot of the questions because I'm usually the only MD on the panel and people ask questions. So we know a lot of things, and so while the idea of social distancing was important to try to stem the tide of the pandemic, it clearly had psychological consequences on people. And so humans are naturally quite a social being. And so to be separated from friends and family, and so I had friends who, for example, lived in Europe who didn't see their children. The parents lived in England and the children lived in like France, and you take the train and get to from London to Paris in like 3 hours, and didn't see their children for 2 years. So this isolation really did have some impact, and it really was felt tremendously in the older adult population, because we heard stories about people finding new friends, this active social life that people were engaging with, clubs, bingo, canasta, chair yoga, other types of activities. Now think about taking all of that away, and someone's just left in their home, just watching the news, describing all the problems with the pandemic. And you could just imagine the psychological stressors to that. Now, COVID itself also has challenges. So beside the acute respiratory challenges that occurred with COVID, although we don't fully understand what it is, the concept of long COVID, it will be probably something that will be with us for a very, very long time as we try to gain more and more information about what it is.
Great. Go ahead, Joy.
I see a trend. People are concerned about brain health and Alzheimer's, and we're going to go back to Oscar in a sec. But I do want to give everybody the opportunity to kind of tie in how self-care, with an emphasis of positive feelings through happiness, can influence better brain health and better outcomes. We know it can't always prevent, but it perhaps some of the, we know that the modifiable risk factors that a couple of the speakers spoke about are behaviors we can engage in and things we can change that can maybe mitigate a decline. So I'll ask you, Dr. Pelkey, what are some recommendations you have that each one of us can take away for improving our brain health?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that Tammy brought up was the Blue Zones Project and how we look at the Power 9 and those come together. We actually had the Blue Zones Project in Southwest Florida for some time. And that was a great model for the Southwest Florida community that, as I said, we have a real difficult time bringing people together despite the large concentration of population we have there. And so some of those concepts about finding your tribe, originally it was wine at 5, and then I think they changed that to take that away, right? But yeah, and so, those pieces, I mean, I think the big pieces, as Dr. Galvin said, we talk about isolation. What I think a lot of people don't realize is that you can feel isolated even though you're with a large group of people. And so getting people to check in on their neighbors, their loved ones, et cetera. And I think COVID was just one of those pieces that really exacerbated the fact that we need to be attending to that for the betterment of everyone.
I agree that I think that people, when you come here, you listen to all these things, you come home and, I'm going to do so many things, and then the next day, we don't do anything. And I think the important thing is to stay in the conversation, is to create groups of people that are, we call them like-minded, like-hearted, that talk the same language. And we can create happiness clubs, we can create longevity clubs, we can create activities that are every day, because it's not enough to talk about it. And Blue Zones, by the way, they didn't start when they were 60. That's how they grew up. So we need to change the environment to support those everyday decisions in the moving, in the food, in the connection, and in the community.
I think figuring out what community means to you, I think we assume that, community means you have a large group of friends and you're going to go out and spend time with them all the time. And it might be that. But if you're me, it's more like a really robust online community who I can talk to regardless. Sometimes I have very little time to do things like this. I don't have the capability and often desire to go out for drinks after work. But having somebody on the other end of my phone almost all the time who's available to understand what I'm saying, or to just talk, or to send me silly things and make me laugh, that's still community. It could be your neighbors, it could be total strangers online. You can build really, really strong communities of strangers who have a shared interest or a shared experience. It could be people you've known your whole life, but I think when you narrow community down to this very traditional understanding of it, you're limiting people's ability to engage in it, because everybody has a different set of circumstances and abilities and desires to go out and engage. And so when we start treating any place where you can get fulfillment and friendship and camaraderie as community, it opens up a whole lot of opportunities for you to find different pockets that make you feel happy, that make you feel welcome, that make you feel included, and that identify maybe in ways that you have trouble finding immediately around you.
Galvin, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think I don't want to repeat everything because these are all great suggestions. So the only thing I would build upon is that so my children are all grown up now, but when my children were little, we always ate dinner together. So I always came home for dinner despite being a resident at the time. And we'd eat dinner together, and the day would always start off, everybody would go around the table and tell us their day. I think even now that my children are out of the house, when my wife and I sit down for dinner, the first thing we say is, tell me about your day. And the idea is that, what did you do today? Tell me about your day. And it makes you really think, like, what did I do today? I think those kind of sort of self-exercises are, maybe this is the things that I would like to do tomorrow. And then did I get those things done, or do I have a plan to get those things done? So while it can be spontaneous, it doesn't have to be spontaneous. Some people are planners, and so they really want to say, well, I would like to read a book by the end of next week. And so then, how many pages did I read today? Or, I should read some more tomorrow. So I think it can be sort of an iterative process, but, setting some goals and trying to figure out how you want to live your life and, what else you have to do it's a good sort of internal progress report.
Thank you all. Oscar, we can have one more question?
Great. Actually, I have two more, and they're quite short. Does cholesterol medication play a role in Alzheimer's?
So high cholesterol and all the attendant vascular problems with high cholesterol are risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Epidemiologic studies, so if you look at a large population of people who take cholesterol-lowering medicines have a lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease than people who have high cholesterol that don't take those medications. Cholesterol medications, though, are not treatments for Alzheimer's disease, and each of the cholesterol medicines are a little bit different in how they work, and so there are some that can cause some confusion or memory issues, but that's temporary in a drug effect, so if you stop the medication, those things tend to improve.
Great, thank you. And for the last questions, what are some suggestions for good and high cognition?
So I'll start, but I think everybody else can chime in. So the suggestion is, find the thing that you like to do and do it. Then once you find that thing you like to do something different, right? Because the brain likes novel things, and so if you exercise and you walk on a treadmill, great. Now do something different, right? Swim, do water aerobics, use a resistance band, take a yoga class, a Tai Chi class. If you read a book, join a book club. If you listen to music, go to a concert, right? So the idea is that challenge yourself each day. And so the high activity is the one that's going to give you the most satisfaction and will open new doors for you.
I think I agree with you that you have to find things that you enjoy. I tend to be the type of person that I have to be engaged in something if I'm not actively doing something, even if I'm also walking or running or whatever. I lose interest very fast and then I don't want to go back to it. And so I've found ways to, really silly ways to engage in activity during my day that has worked better at this point in my life than it ever has before. Like, I got a standing desk and the equivalent of a jukebox, and now I'm moving all day. But I don't feel like I'm moving. I don't feel like I'm busy and being active, but like on my watch it shows that I've been going all day. So if I'm the type of person that if I don't have a reward at the end, and like a tangible reward, and just doing the thing isn't enough for me, then I just won't do it. And so I think setting up ways that you can gamify even your own activity, your own cognitive behaviors, things like that, it creates ways that you will also enjoy it, but it also incentivizes you to keep doing it.
I would say, we are as good as the 5 people around us, okay? So if we are around people that are smokers and they eat hot dogs all the time, probably we're going to do the same thing. So I would urge you to be around people that want to do what you want to do, that think positively. And I want to say one thing, positive, we all want to do things, and things happen in our life. It's hard things that happen in our life. And I think this is something that we can train ourselves every day. Okay, grandmother used to say to look at the half full cup, but it really is like that. Because positive psychology doesn't suggest that there are no challenges. It doesn't suggest that there are no difficulties. It suggests that we can choose to focus on what works in the picture. And this is something that you need to practice every day in and day out. And with people that think the same like you will see that life can actually change.
I think I would just kind of carry on what Jim said from the physical side. One of the things we really try to promote is volunteer opportunities and getting those in front of individuals, because it gives them that opportunity to be physical, be social, give themselves a sense of purpose and meaning. And then on the cognitive side, obviously as an academic, we sit here and talk about lifelong learning and those aspects. And I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with the fact that the state of Florida has a program in place that older adults, 60 and older, can take a college course at a public university at no charge. So again, going to Jim's idea or point there about find something you love. Maybe there's a topic, a subject that you're really interested in. Go to a university, take one of those courses. And then while you're there, find out the other things that are going on at that university and challenge yourself to go take another course. Great thing is you don't have to do the homework. So.
I want to thank everybody. The New Face of Aging conference is something we work really hard on, and I want to thank the staff and the team at the Alliance and my co-chair, Heather. And we want to thank all of our panelists. And Heather, do I turn it over to you now? We are going to be giving our panelists a gift of thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all next year. And we wish you a happy day. When you go outside and there's traffic, please remember to hold on to that pause. Sometimes she's saying the smile, so smile. Listen, take Arnold's advice. But this too shall pass, right? It's just a moment in time. Put on some good music and be safe. So we have these awards.
Thank you.
It's a party at the lectern. So, the chair of the board asks you if she can jump in and share a couple of final thoughts. You give the microphone over, so here we go.
I texted her while she was sitting in the corner. I just wanted to say that we have two people who went way above and beyond for the last number of years. Joy, before you sit down, you're one of them. I just want to thank you from all of us. You have no idea the behind-the-scenes work. These two ladies, Heather, thank you for everything, have put their family time, their personal time, sometimes their happiness time on hold to be able to bring this to us today, countless hours, and just want to thank you for everything that you've done, and thank you to the panelists. Absolutely amazing presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. That was, we love what we do. We love working with each of you. We are so honored that all of you have come out today, and you do this year after year after year, and so thank you for your support. The tokens of appreciation, please know how grateful we are. We know you are out of the office. We know that you have patients. We know that you have sessions that you are missing. Thank you for spending this day with us today. The closing remarks are just what an extraordinary time this has been. Thank you for sticking with us, for those who stayed. And we filled it with insight and laughter and community, and most importantly, bits of happiness. We don't expect that you leave here and everybody's happy. That would make us weird, like happy all the time. Nobody's expecting you to do that. But all of the experts on the stage talked about the way that we can tap into that when we need that. So we want to say, on behalf of the Alliance for Aging, thank you for joining us. We hope you leave empowered and with new tools. Thank you, Dr. Galvin. Thank you, Lauren, Tammy, and Dr. Felke for your expertise and time today.